The 1980s brought new processed foods and convenience items into Black households, but the old traditions never truly disappeared. Families mixed modern shortcuts with Southern cooking wisdom, creating meals that were delicious, filling, and would make today's health experts absolutely horrified. These weren't just foods, they were survival strategies, budget solutions, and comfort wrapped in aluminum foil and served on paper plates. Here are 25 things Black families ate in the 1980s that people who lived through this era will never forget. Number 1. Mixing Cool Whip into everything sweet. Using Cool Whip as the foundation for every dessert was how Black families in the 1980s created treats that felt fancy without spending fancy money. That plastic tub of frozen whipped toppings sat in freezers across America, ready to be thawed and stirred into fruit salads, spread onto pound cake, or folded into Jello to create what grandmothers called salad, but was really just dessert pretending to be healthy. Cool Whip went into ambrosia, that strange combination of canned fruit, coconut, marshmallows, and whipped topping that showed up at every family gathering. It got layered into icebox cakes made with graham crackers that softened overnight into something resembling actual cake. Some aunties would mix it with cream cheese and sugar, creating a dip for strawberries that disappeared within minutes at cookouts. The ingredient list on Cool Whip would concern anyone reading it today. Hydrogenated oils, corn syrup, artificial flavors, but in the 1980s, it represented modern convenience. Real whipped cream required effort and equipment that many families didn't have, but Cool Whip just needed a spoon and some imagination. Kids loved it because it was sweet and light. Adults loved it because one container could stretch into multiple desserts with minimal effort. That plastic tub became a symbol of 1980s innovation, proof that good things came in convenient packages, even if those packages were filled with ingredients that bore little resemblance to actual cream. Number 2. Eating potted meat sandwiches for lunch. Spreading potted meat onto white bread with a thick layer of mayonnaise was a lunch solution that Black families relied on throughout the 1980s. Those tiny cans cost almost nothing and could sit in the pantry for months without spoiling, making them perfect backup food for when groceries ran low before payday. The meat itself was a mystery, processed, spreadable, vaguely resembling deviled ham but without any identifiable pieces of anything. Kids learned not to ask too many questions about what exactly went into potted meat. The texture was smooth, almost paste-like, and the flavor was salty with hints of spices that masked whatever meat products had been ground into submission. Some families mixed it with pickle relish or mustard to give it more personality. Others ate it straight from the can with crackers when bread wasn't available. Potted meat sandwiches got packed in lunchboxes, eaten as after-school snacks, and served when unexpected guests showed up and something had to be put on the table quickly. Nutritionists today would cringe at the sodium levels, the processing, and the mysterious ingredient list that seemed to include everything except actual identifiable meat. But for Black families in the 1980s, potted meat represented reliability. It was always there when you needed it, it filled you up, and it cost less than $1. Number 3. Drinking Hawaiian Punch by the gallon. Keeping Hawaiian Punch as the household beverage was standard practice in Black homes during the 1980s. That distinctive red can with the smiling punchy mascot was mixed with water in large pitchers that lived permanently in refrigerators. The drink was pure sugar with artificial fruit flavoring, but it tasted tropical and exciting compared to plain water. Kids drank it at breakfast, lunch, dinner, and any time in between. The powder form was even cheaper than the cans, and mothers would mix it strong, sometimes adding extra powder to make it taste more intense and last longer. Hawaiian Punch showed up at birthday parties in plastic cups, at church functions in big coolers, and at family reunions where kids ran around with red-stained mouths. Some families diluted it heavily to stretch the container further, creating a pale pink drink that barely tasted like anything, but was still better than water in children's opinions. The sugar content was astronomical, the artificial colors bright and alarming, and the nutritional value essentially zero. But Hawaiian Punch felt special in a way that water never could. It signaled celebration, gathering, and childhood joy. Adults drank it too, sometimes mixing it with alcohol for parties, proving that those artificial tropical flavors appealed across generations. Number 4. Making Jell-O Salad with vegetables inside. Creating Jello molds with vegetables suspended inside was how Black families in the 1980s turned dessert into something they could pretend was healthy. Lime Jello got mixed with shredded carrots and celery, creating a bright green gelatin dish that wobbled on plates and confused everyone about whether it belonged with the main course or dessert. Orange Jello contained mandarin oranges and sometimes shredded cabbage. Red Jello held beets or radishes for families who really committed to the concept. These creations came from recipe cards and community cookbooks that promised salads that were really just sweetened gelatin with random vegetables trapped inside. The process required planning, making the Jello, waiting for it to partially set, adding the vegetables, and then waiting several more hours for everything to solidify completely. Grandmothers took pride in their Jello molds, unmolding them onto lettuce leaves and serving them with a dollop of mayonnaise on top like it made sense. Kids approached these dishes with suspicion, uncertain whether they were supposed to enjoy the sweetness or focus on the vegetables. The combination of sugar and celery, of artificial fruit flavor and shredded carrot was deeply confusing to young palates, but Jell-O Salad appeared regularly at potlucks and holiday dinners because it was colorful, jiggly, and different. The fact that it contained vegetables technically made it salad, even if everything else about it screamed dessert. Number 5. Eating bologna fried until the edges curled. Frying thick slices of bologna in a hot skillet until the edges curled up like cups was breakfast and lunch in Black households throughout the 1980s. That cylindrical tube of processed meat got sliced thick, none of those deli-thin pieces, and dropped into sizzling grease until both sides browned and the meat transformed from soft and cold to crispy and hot. The edges would curl up naturally from the heat, creating a bowl shape that kids loved because it looked funny and held condiments perfectly. Fried bologna went onto sandwiches with cheese, got served alongside eggs for breakfast, or was eaten straight from the pan when nobody was looking. Some families scored an X into each slice before frying to prevent curling if they wanted it flat, but most embraced the curl as part of the experience. The smell of frying bologna filled kitchens and signaled that someone was making food with love and limited resources. Oscar Mayer was the preferred brand, but store brands worked just as well when money was especially tight. A whole tube cost less than most other meats and could feed the family for several meals. The sodium and preservatives would alarm any nutritionist, but fried bologna represented comfort food at its most accessible.
6. Keeping squeezed Parkay in the refrigerator. Using squeezed Parkay margarine on everything was how Black families in the 1980s added butter flavor without butter prices. That plastic squeeze bottle with the bright label sat in refrigerators next to the milk, ready to be squirted onto toast, vegetables, and anything else that needed richness. Parkay wasn't real butter, it was margarine made from vegetable oils, artificial flavors, and enough yellow coloring to make it look convincing. The squeeze bottle was pure 1980s innovation, eliminating the need for knives and making portion control impossible because kids would squeeze far more than necessary onto their food. The television commercials featured a talking tub that insisted it was butter, which everyone knew was a lie, but accepted anyway, because Parkay was what fit the budget. It melted on hot pancakes and toast, got mixed into mashed potatoes, and was used for cooking when recipes called for butter. The taste was different, slightly chemical, a bit too soft, missing that rich depth that real butter provided. But it was close enough for families who couldn't afford the real thing. The squeeze bottle made it feel modern and fun, turning a budget substitute into something kids actually enjoyed using. Parkay represented the 1980s perfectly. Processed, convenient, and pretending to be something it wasn't while everyone agreed to go along with the fiction. 7. Eating TV dinners in aluminum trays. Heating up Swanson TV dinners in their aluminum trays was how Black families experienced fancy meals without fancy preparation during the 1980s. These frozen dinners came in boxes featuring pictures of perfect meals that rarely matched what actually emerged from the oven. Each compartment held a different food, maybe fried chicken, mashed potatoes, corn, and a brownie, all separated by raised metal dividers. The dinners went straight from freezer to oven in their aluminum trays, cooking at 350 degrees for what felt like forever, while kids waited impatiently. The smell of heating processed food filled the house, and eventually the dinner was ready, brought to the table still in its tray because washing extra dishes defeated the purpose of convenience. The chicken was never crispy, the potatoes were either dried out or watery, and the vegetables tasted like they'd been frozen for decades, which they probably had. But TV dinners felt special because they were individual meals, restaurant-style portions that came ready-made. Kids loved them because eating from a tray felt different from regular plates, and because dessert was built into the meal rather than being conditional on finishing vegetables. The sodium content was outrageous, the nutritional value questionable, and the taste mediocre at best. But TV dinners represented modern convenience, proof that families could have home-cooked meals without actual cooking. 9. Making sandwiches with Miracle Whip instead of mayo. Spreading Miracle Whip on sandwiches because it was cheaper than mayonnaise was a substitution that Black families made regularly in the 1980s. That jar with the blue label looked similar enough to mayonnaise that kids didn't immediately notice the difference, but the taste was distinctly sweeter, tangier, and less rich. Miracle Whip was technically salad dressing rather than mayonnaise, made with less oil and more sugar, creating a product that cost less and lasted longer on grocery budgets. It went onto bologna sandwiches, got mixed into tuna and chicken salad, and was spread thick on white bread for sandwiches that consisted of nothing but Miracle Whip and bread when food was especially scarce. Some families genuinely preferred Miracle Whip's tangy sweetness, while others used it only because it saved $1 compared to real mayo. The difference mattered during tight weeks when every penny counted toward keeping food on the table. Kids who grew up on Miracle Whip often didn't realize it wasn't real mayonnaise until they were adults and someone pointed out the distinction. The product occupied a strange middle ground. Not quite mayo, not quite salad dressing, but something uniquely itself that defined 1980s convenience food culture. 9. Drinking Sunny Delight like it was orange juice. Buying Sunny Delight in large plastic bottles and calling it orange juice was how Black families in the 1980s provided vitamin C on a budget. That bright orange drink came in containers that looked like juice bottles, and the label prominently featured oranges, creating the impression of fruit-based nutrition. But Sunny D, as everyone called it, was mostly water, corn syrup, and artificial flavoring with just enough juice concentrate to justify the fruit imagery. Kids drank it by the glass, poured it over cereal when milk ran out, and considered it a normal breakfast beverage. The taste was aggressively sweet, with a chemical aftertaste that real orange juice never had, but when you'd never had freshly squeezed juice, you didn't know what you were missing. Some families bought the large gallon-sized bottles that cost less than actual orange juice and lasted longer because kids instinctively drank less of something that tasted artificial. Sunny Delight represented aspirational nutrition. Families wanted to provide orange juice, but couldn't afford it regularly, so they bought the next best thing that came in similar packaging and featured fruit on the label. The vitamin C was added artificially, the sugar content rivaled soda, and the ingredients list read like a chemistry experiment. But it was orange-colored, it was cold, and it was available, which made it good enough. 10. Eating fish sticks every Friday without fail. Serving fish sticks from the freezer every Friday was how Catholic and non-Catholic Black families alike maintained the tradition of Friday fish during the 1980s. Those rectangular breaded pieces of mystery fish came in large boxes, baked up golden in the oven, and provided an easy protein option when nobody had energy for complicated cooking. The fish inside was usually pollock or some other whitefish that had been processed, formed, and breaded until it bore little resemblance to anything that had swum in the ocean. Kids dipped them in ketchup or tartar sauce, ate them with macaroni and cheese or French fries, and considered it a complete meal. Some families fried their fish sticks in oil, despite the package directions saying to bake them, creating a crispier exterior that kids preferred. The fish sticks were convenient, kid-friendly, and infinitely cheaper than actual fish fillets from the seafood counter. They required no preparation beyond opening the box and turning on the oven, making them perfect for Friday nights when everyone was tired from the week. The breading to fish ratio was heavily weighted towards breading, which was fine because that's where all the flavor lived. The actual fish was mild, slightly rubbery, and forgettable. But fish sticks fulfilled the Friday fish requirement, pleased children who would have rejected real seafood, and cost less than $5 for a box that could stretch across multiple meals. 11. Pouring carnation evaporated milk into coffee instead of cream was how Black families in the 1980s made their morning beverage rich without keeping fresh cream in the house. Those small cans of concentrated milk could sit in the pantry for months, always ready when someone wanted to lighten their coffee. The milk was thick and slightly sweet from the evaporation process, creating a creamy coffee that felt luxurious despite being made from canned goods. Some families punched 2 holes in the top of the can and poured directly into cups. Others kept an open can in the refrigerator, covering it with plastic wrap or aluminum foil between uses. Evaporated milk went into more than just coffee. It got mixed into macaroni and cheese, poured over cereal when regular milk ran out, and used in recipes that called for cream. The canned milk represented food security in a way that fresh milk never could. It didn't spoil, it didn't require refrigeration before opening, and it lasted practically forever in the pantry. For families who couldn't always afford to keep fresh milk on hand or who lived far from grocery stores, evaporated milk was reliability in a small metal can. 12. Making oodles of noodles with extra butter. Cooking oodles of noodles ramen packets as a full meal was standard practice in Black households during the 1980s. Those individual packets cost less than $0.25 each, making them perfect food for when paychecks were still days away, but stomachs were empty now. The preparation was simple. Boil water, add noodles, cook for 3 minutes, stir in the flavor packet. But Black families elevated ramen beyond its basic form. They added extra butter to make it richer, dropped in a slice of American cheese that melted into the broth, or cracked an egg into the boiling water for protein. Some families mixed in frozen vegetables to pretend it was a balanced meal, while others fried the noodles crispy in a pan after boiling them. Kids loved ramen because they could make it themselves without adult supervision. The flavors were salty and satisfying, chicken, beef, and oriental being the most popular options. A single packet didn't really fill anyone up, so most people ate 2 or 3 at a time, which still cost less than $1. The sodium content was catastrophic, with 1 packet containing more salt than anyone should consume in a day. But ramen was hot, tasty, and available. It represented food democracy, nourishment that absolutely anyone could afford and prepare, regardless of cooking skills or kitchen equipment. 13. Eating government cheese on everything. Slicing thick pieces from blocks of government cheese and melting it onto everything was a reality for many Black families during the 1980s. This cheese came through federal assistance programs in 5-pound blocks wrapped in generic packaging, and it melted unlike anything available in stores. The texture was perfect for grilled cheese sandwiches that turned golden and crispy, with insides that stretched in long, satisfying strings. Government cheese made macaroni and cheese creamy and rich, elevated scrambled eggs into something special, and transformed plain crackers into a decent snack. Kids didn't know or care that it was welfare cheese. They just knew it tasted incredible and made everything better. The cheese was thick enough that slicing it required a real knife and some muscle, and a single block could last a family for weeks if they were careful. There was no shame in government cheese because half the neighborhood had it, and everyone agreed it was better than what you could buy at the store. That distinctive taste and texture became the standard by which all other cheese was judged. People who grew up eating government cheese still talk about how nothing since has melted quite the same way, how modern cheese can't replicate that perfect creaminess. 14. Drinking red Kool-Aid at every gathering. Making red Kool-Aid for every single family function was such a universal practice in Black households during the 1980s that it became a cultural marker. Red was the default flavor: strawberry, cherry, or the mysterious tropical punch that didn't taste like any fruit that existed in nature. The powder got dumped into large pitchers with 2 cups of sugar minimum, creating a drink so sweet and so red that it stained everything it touched. Kids' lips and tongues turned bright red within minutes of drinking it. White t-shirts never recovered from spills. But red Kool-Aid was non-negotiable at cookouts, family reunions, church functions, and any gathering where Black people came together. It sat in coolers alongside ice, in pitchers on tables, and in the refrigerator ready for anyone who wanted a glass. The adults drank it as readily as the children, sometimes mixing it stronger, sometimes adding less sugar, but always keeping that distinctive red color that marked it as the official beverage of celebration. Nobody questioned why it was always red. Why not purple or orange or any other flavor? Red Kool-Aid was simply what you served, as fundamental to gatherings as paper plates and potato salad.
15. Eating Beanie Weenies straight from the can. Opening a can of Van Camp's Beanie Weenies and eating them cold or heated for dinner was a meal solution that Black families used throughout the 1980s. Those small cans contained pork and beans with hot dog pieces mixed in, creating a combination that was both meat and vegetables in one convenient package. Kids could open them and eat them straight from the can when parents weren't home, or mothers could heat them on the stove for a quick dinner when nothing else was available. Some families poured Beanie Weenies over rice to stretch them further, while others ate them with cornbread or white bread to make a complete meal. The hot dogs were soft and slightly slimy from soaking in the bean sauce, but kids didn't care about texture when they were hungry. The whole can cost less than $1 and could feed one person completely or two people adequately when combined with bread. The sodium and preservatives were probably dangerous, and the nutritional value was debatable, but Beanie Weenies represented convenience and reliability. They required no refrigeration before opening, no complicated preparation, and no cooking skills whatsoever. These weren't just foods, they were survival strategies, budget solutions, and comfort wrapped in cans, boxes, and plastic bottles. Which of these 1980s foods brings back the strongest memories? Leave a comment sharing what filled your childhood table. Hit the like button and subscribe for more journeys into the meals that shaped a generation.